Well, I don't know what it's like in Canadian culture, Lindsay, but in the UK culture, polite people talk about the weather to each other. So given that I'm a very polite kind of guy, I'm living in England. I was born in Scotland, but, you know, there you go, Irish ancestry. But what is the weather like in Canada today?
So I'm on the west coast of Canada. So I live in British Columbia, southern British Columbia. Yeah. And today where I am, the weather is it's okay. We've got it's about 22. It's going to be a high of about 22 degrees Celsius, which is a lot milder than what we've experienced in the past week. The past week, John, we actually experienced an extreme heat wave here on the west coast of Canada. They call it a heat dome. So I guess what happened is they had a very strong ridge of high pressure. I believe it might have come up from Oregon. It also stayed kind of in Oregon, and it formed this dome where cooler air could not get underneath. Yeah. So usually, because we're a coastal area, we have the cool air from the ocean that kind of cools off the land. But this heat dome formed this dome-like weather feature, I guess, that did not allow any of that air to get in. So it was very strange. Now, this sometimes happens, not to this extreme, but later in summer. But this happened very early. It was very abrupt. And we were not ready for this in British Columbia. We were also not climatized to this. So previous to this, we'd had a fairly cool June. Temperatures had been maybe 18 degrees, you know, fairly mild for our area. And then this heat dome moved in, and it lasted about 3 or 4 days. We saw temperatures go up in some areas. There was a town called Lytton, BC, where they broke records 3 days in a row. They recorded records up to 49 degrees. I think
that's like 120 in American or something, isn't it? 120 degrees Fahrenheit. It's crazy hot, isn't it? Crazy hot.
It really is. And we Canadians, we do not know how to deal with this kind of heat.
And it's not just Canada, Lindsay, is it? It's all the west coast of the Americas, really. So it's going down into Washington State, all the way down to California.
Yeah, Portland, Oregon also recorded very high temperatures. So it was quite severe. Unfortunately, now we are seeing reports of people actually dying from heat-related illness. In my province, over 700 people so far is what's reported from the BC Coroner's Service.
What's the population of BC, Lindsay, to put that in context?
About 5 million. We've got about 5 million people. So I think what happened is
that's a lot of 700 people died of the heat.
And that is excess deaths. That is heat-related illness. This is not just normal. Now, I know that there were also some complications as far as ambulances go, because they became overwhelmed with calls. And so some people, had they received treatment earlier, these deaths maybe could have been avoided. Now, thankfully, the heat dome has dissipated, but as it dissipated, it became unstable, and we experienced a lot of lightning strikes that have now caused wildfires. So now we still have fairly warm temperatures. Some of my province is still very hot. So everything is dry. We have lightning. There's been a lot of wind as this system has changed and moved over into the province of Alberta. And I believe there are over 60 wildfires happening right now in British Columbia.
I've heard it's the same on the western coast of the States as well. Wildfires cause. So basically, it was very dry for a long period of time. Everything dried out
for about 4 or 5 days. It was a short period of time with very high heat.
Yeah, and that dried things out. And then this instability, rather than getting rain, you got lightning, and that's causing fires. So there was not one town basically burnt down somewhere in BC.
Yes, Lytton, BC, where they had recorded those record temperatures. They were the hotspot in all of North America for about 3 days, and unfortunately, they're not sure what caused it. But Lytton is in a canyon. Okay, so it looks like, from the photos that I saw, it looks like the fire maybe started in the mountains. So maybe it was lightning. I don't know. It could have been human caused. I don't know. And it just kind of went down the ridge into the town. Most of the town, they say over 90% of the town is destroyed. And we do have other communities in my province that are now on evacuation orders or warnings that they may be asked to evacuate. So, you know, John, this is a bit of a trend. Like we have seen out of the last 5 years in on the West Coast here, we've seen about 3 of those 5 years, we've seen extreme fire issues. So, but usually it's near the end. So usually it's near like August, so the end of summer. This came very, very early, and it was just incredibly, incredibly intense.
Right. And it's kind of weird as well because, again, with the lack of rain. I mean, is rain forecast?
No, and rain is not in the forecast for at least the next 10 days for most parts of British Columbia. So we don't have any idea of when this might be ending. And after the fires comes the smoke from the fires, which I remember last summer, John, I think I was on your channel in August talking about the air quality. So our air quality was about a 4 these last couple of days in the hottest days. But how
does that scale work, Lindsay? Is it 0, good, 5?
Sorry, that's a moderate. That's considered moderate as far as the risk level goes, because we know that people with asthma, COPD, and cardiovascular issues start to have issues with air quality, right? And so it starts to become unsafe for them to go outside. So
you wouldn't want to go jogging in that either, would you? Because you're breathing in larger volumes of smoke.
That's right. That's right.
And you can see that in the air, can you? That's kind of a problem all over.
Yeah, not right now, not where I am right now, but I anticipate that eventually the smoke from all of these fires that are burning will come over to the area that I'm in, and it's really unfortunate. I mean, a lot of people have already lost their homes, and it's becoming something that is more the norm in British Columbia. We do have a lot of forests here, and so we have a lot of kindling. We say, I don't know if you say this in the UK, we say kindling for fire. You do? Okay. So when things are dry, it's really easy, and windy, it's really easy for these fires to just spread rapidly.
Much more the sort of problem you'd normally associate with Australia, where they're all kind of geared up for that kind of thing, rather than Canada. So how is this affecting people, Lindsay? When the weather's hot, why are more people dying?
I think that part of it, John, is that people generally on the West Coast here are not, like I said, not prepared to recognize the signs and symptoms of heat exhaustion or even heat stroke. So heat stroke is actually a medical emergency. So if a person is overheated to the point that they're starting to have issues with consciousness, or they're becoming confused, rapid heart rate, they no longer seek water, that sort of thing, those are signs of heat stroke. Now, heat stroke is...
All right, so their ability to realize, their insight goes. The body temperature goes up, the brain's not working properly, and they don't realize they need to take clothes off, they don't realize they need to drink. Yeah, so vicious spiral.
Yeah, and so the elderly, especially elderly people who live alone, as well as very young children, because children don't necessarily communicate well how they're feeling, are at more risk for this type of illness. And so what we've seen, I actually know a story of someone I know who lost their mother-in-law this last week. She was living alone. She was hot from the heat, and they told her, if you start to feel really ill, call for help. And she did not, because she was scared of going to the hospital because of COVID, even though our numbers are quite low now. I mean, this is a factor as well right now, John, is people not seeking medical attention, right? So, I mean, I will share some symptoms with you of heat exhaustion and some ways that you can try to protect yourself from getting sick from the heat. So one thing is to tune into regular radio forecasts and just pay attention to what's going on with the weather so you are aware. Another thing that you can do is arrange for regular visits from family members if you live alone. So you have someone checking in on you, even if it's just by phone, to see if you're okay, if you're coherent, if you need help. And then also find ways to keep cool before it gets hot. So obviously air conditioners or fans are important, but in this kind of heat, fans were not really, I don't think that they were enough. So I did hear that sometimes you can put like a wet towel in front of a fan, or some people put towels into the freezer. I mean, maybe your viewers, if they have tips for people, they could actually put this in the comments.
Please do. Yeah, please do.
Put towels in the freezer, lay those on yourself. drink water, put a glass by the sink so you actually remember to drink water. Fruits and vegetables are generally, so there's some that are higher in water content, and so you can try to eat those types of foods. And also keep your gas tank in your car full, because if you do need to go out, or if you do need to seek help or help anyone, you don't want to have to be stopping at the gas station to fill up, right? So that's also important if you're in a wildfire area. So some of the symptoms that people can watch out for, dizziness or fainting. I'll put these up here, John, and we'll put
excellent. Yeah, I love these. Yeah.
So
go through them, Lindsay. That's great. Yeah.
Nausea or vomiting, headache. I'm sorry, I'm reading through the back here.
Yeah.
But these are all the different symptoms that you can watch out for. And then if this is happening,
the next one is rapid breathing and heartbeat, Lindsay.
Okay, rapid breathing and heartbeat.
Yeah.
Any kind of decreased urine output or dark urine can be a sign of dehydration. If you start to notice this in yourself or anyone else, what you need to do is you need to, I'm not sure if this is showing here.
No, it is, yeah.
Move the person to a cool place, get them some water. You can even try to put cold or wet towels onto them. And these are just a few things that you can do to try to stay safe. Now, as a pharmacist, I would be remiss if I did not mention that there are certain medications that can also make your skin more sensitive to the sun. So certain antibiotics, particularly doxycycline. I actually had this reaction. So certain drugs can actually create like a phototoxic effect in your skin, and there's different mechanisms for that, where the membranes of the cells actually they become more predisposed to burning. Okay, or there could be like the medication itself could interact with the UV rays and cause like a rash. There's different mechanisms for this.
So what happened in your case? You had that. Tell us what happened
so
to
in
you.
my case, I was on a course of doxycycline, which is a tetracycline antibiotic, and my doctor had warned me, you might get this side effect, and I thought, oh no, like I'm a pharmacist, it's not going to happen to me. We were on vacation, and I went out in the sun, and the rash that I got did not happen until about an hour or two after. So it's not necessarily immediate that you notice, oh, my skin is burning faster than normal. And it's important to note that I was wearing sunscreen. Okay. And sunscreen, when you have skin that is this sensitive, sunscreen will also not protect you from heat illness, by the way.
No.
But when you have medication that leaves your skin more predisposed to burning, the sunscreen is, it's not going to harm you, but it's not really going to help you that much. So you do need to be conscious and aware. So here's some different, and I have a link, we'll put in the description of the video.
Yeah, let's put these in the description, Lindsay.
Because I'm not going to read them all out here, but even like some common cholesterol medications like statins or some anti-inflammatories. Now, not everyone will get this sun sensitivity reaction. So some people will be on like thiazide diuretics. So hydrochlorothiazide is a very common diuretic that a lot of people take. It can make your skin more sensitive to the sun. Not everyone will have this reaction, but you really don't want to wait until you have a terrible sunburn, which is what happened to me, to realize that it's the medication that was causing it. So often we get excited when it's summer and the weather is better, and
we need to make some vitamin D.
And we need to make vitamin D, and we're out in the sun, and we need to be aware of medications that we're taking that could leave us more predisposed to sunburn.
So check any medications with your doctor or pharmacist and see if that's likely. I mean, I know I take statins, and I personally have no bother. With the sun, so it's obviously not everyone, but it's an interesting.
It's something to be aware of.
Interesting one to know. Yeah. I've ridden motorbikes in places like India and things, and when the temperature's above 37 degrees centigrade, which is 98.4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is body temperature, if you're riding in that, as you ride along, you actually get hotter. Because the hot air is flowing over you, and it's actually warming you up, whereas you normally you normally ride a motorbike to cool down.
Yes.
And that only works if it's below body temperature. So the key thing is, as you all know, is to apply water to the surface of the skin. And then as the water evaporates, it extracts the latent heat of vaporization. From the body. The energy it takes to go from a liquid to go to a vapor is very high. And that takes, so the key thing is the is the moisture, but the evaporation of the moisture. So adding tepid water to the surface of the body greatly helps with cooling. And this is why that we can actually tolerate really high temperatures as long as we're sweating. So if people get to a point where they can't sweat anymore, the body temperature will go up really quickly because there's no longer the sweat on the surface of the skin. It's no longer extracting this latent heat of vaporization from the surface of the body, and the temperature can go up like that. Absolutely scoot up.
And that is one of, I didn't mention that, John, but that is one of the signs of heat stroke. If you notice that a person or a child is no longer sweating, that is a medical emergency. That is one of the things to watch out for.
Absolutely. And drink preventatively. Now, in Australia, everyone, I've spent time in hot countries and everyone knows this. Everyone carries a bottle of water.
Sure.
And they drink before they get thirsty. A lot of people don't realize that you don't actually get thirsty till you've lost about 1.5% of your body water. So thirst is actually a very poor mechanism by which to adjudicate your fluid intake.
It's interesting.
The way to adjudicate your fluid intake is the color of your wee.
Yeah.
It really is that simple. So if you haven't passed urine for a few hours, you're not drinking enough. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And the color of your urine. So if the color of your urine stays a nice light color, and if that means passing urine somewhere where you can see your urine, then that's absolutely fine. I'll give you permission to do that. That's it's an important thing to know about and drink that large amount of fluid. The other one we get in this country, Lindsay, and I expect it's the same in Canada. There's been some tragedies in military situations. Soldiers training, and we're like you in Canada. It's not normally that hot. But there was a few soldiers training on the Brecon Beacons about 3 years ago in the UK, and these guys are tough, full combats. Wow. I think they were training for the SAS or something, so carrying these huge packs. And of course, these guys are tough. It's what they're there for. So they think, oh, I'm hot, but that's okay. That's just part of the pain. My legs hurt. I'm breathing hard. I'm hurting, and I'll just go on and fight through the pain. But when you're wearing full combats, even though you're sweating, the sweat's not drying. So you might be wringing with sweat. Yeah. But if there's no breeze going over that to evaporate the sweat. So it's not the sweating that cools you down. It's the evaporation of the sweat. And as you say, they become hotter, they become incoherent. And this is an acute hyperthermic, life-threatening emergency. There was also quite a few cases in the British and I'm sure Canadian experience in Iraq, for example.
Oh, okay.
Where the temperature can go up to 50 degrees. I mean, it's just unimaginable. I mean, the highest temperature I've probably been exposed to is probably about 42 degrees, and you just can't do anything.
Absurd. Yeah.
I remember working in hospital in Cambodia, and I was I wear a really thin shirt, open sandals, the lightest trousers you can possibly have, and light any other essentials as possibly as you can get. Yeah. And I think, I'm so hot. I'm so hot. And you look at the temperature, and it's only something like, it was only about 35, 36. But of course, it's humid. Yeah. So that means there's a lower gradient from the moisture on the surface of the skin to the atmospheric air, so it doesn't evaporate as quickly. But I've been in other situations where it's like 40 degrees, it doesn't feel as hot. Yeah. But I know when you get over 40, basically you just don't want to do anything. It becomes a dangerous situation. And as you rightly say, older people can't control the body temperatures as well. And of course, children under the age of 2 can't really control the body temperature as well, or people with spinal injuries or various other disabilities. Yeah, if you got a spinal injury, then below the level, a friend of mine's got a high level spinal injury. We've made a video together. It's quite an interesting video about his life. And below the level of the lesion, he can't vasoconstrict, he can't vasodilate, and he can't sweat properly. Wow. Because what he says is the worst thing about spinal injuries is not the paralysis. It's the fact that your autonomic nervous system doesn't work properly. Right. So your bowel, your bladder, all that kind of stuff. And so, basically, if it's cold, he has to be really careful to keep warm. If it's hot, he has to be really careful to keep cool. And we need to think of people in these difficult situations.
Yeah.
And then, of course, over a period of time, you think of the marathon runner, the long distance cyclist, progressive dehydration, but then, of course, progressive electrolyte imbalance as well. When I sweat, my sweat tastes salty. But then when I was living in the tropics for a longer period of time, over the course of months, you notice that your sweat tastes less salty.
Right.
So part of heat tropical adaptation is your sweat becomes more hypotonic. So you're not losing as much sodium. And of course, that's a way of retaining sodium in the body. But these things, of course, take months to develop. Your levels of thyroid hormone in hot environments will go down. But as you've said, in the Canadian situation, these physiological and maybe more importantly, these behavioral adaptations weren't there. And that puts people at risk.
Yeah, I actually read about that because it is true that as Canadians, and I'm speaking specifically of the West Coast, because this heat wave hit so early, our bodies have not had a time to what they call this climatizing, right, to these conditions. So we did not have time for this month, few months that it takes for your body to transition over to that. And I think that that's part of the reason that this was so serious for some people.
Well, which reminds me of something amazing that the same body can adapt to the cold and can adapt to the heat and can adapt to altitude. We are flexible.
Yes, we are.
But it takes time. It takes time, and you just can't do that all of a sudden. So is there fairly good public awareness in Canada about these risks and the symptoms and looking after the vulnerable, or people just, I don't know, is there a consciousness of this aspect of health education?
Well, of taking care of other people, or
of realizing the risks in the heat and how to prevent it, and how to.
I think that this is a bit new to our culture. This is not something that usually we enjoy the heat. So when we get 35 degrees, it's very exceptional, and generally we enjoy it. I mean, I personally don't really like the heat. I prefer spring. It's my favorite season because the summer heat is just not my thing. But generally, just having to think about the heat as far as a health concern or a health issue for some people, especially those who are more vulnerable, I think this is new. And for the last 16 months, we've had to worry about COVID-19 in the elderly and in people who are more susceptible. And now to have to kind of just to have been bombarded with this weather system, I think it really caught us off guard. And I think we'll be more aware moving forward, but unfortunately, it has been tragic. There have been lives that were lost, and I think that is largely just due to a lack of awareness as to how serious heat stroke can be and how it is a medical emergency. You do need to seek help, and also be prepared. I don't think we were prepared because we don't usually get this heat at the end of June.
And 700 deaths is the evidence for what you're saying, Lindsay. It's
so
clear,
so far, I'm sure it will be higher than that, and I'm sure that will increase.
And the other thing is from the COVID side, if when it's cold, people shut the doors and shut the windows to keep warm inside. And of course, it's the same when it's hot. People shut the doors and windows to keep the cold in.
Yes.
And of course, that means they're in a closed environment, greater risk of infection. So I've heard this phrase global weirding. Now, I'm not a climatologist, but it's outside my area of specialism. But, I don't think there's any serious debate now that there is a global warming, but there's also this things are becoming weird. So I've actually been out for a motorbike ride in Cambodia when I've been doing some teaching in the hot season. And all of a sudden it starts raining. And when it rains, it's just like buckets of water falling out of the sky. You're like completely drenched in about 10 seconds. You're completely drenched. In the old days in the tropics, it wouldn't rain in the hot season. The wet season and the rainy season were separated. Now it's getting mixed up. And is this a sort of a popular concern in Canada? Is there a lot of awareness and anxiety about this?
There definitely is. And, the wildfires are something that we cannot ignore. And seeing that every year, it almost seems that we have a worse season, wildfire season. And just to see the destruction that is causing, there is definitely concern that this is the trend. The record that was broken in Lytton, BC, I think it was 49.2 degrees. I think that was a 100-year-old record. So these are temperatures that we have experienced in past, but just the general trend. I've not heard of global weirding, but I definitely feel that things have been strange. So just the even certain rains that we have. I mean, generally we have a lot of rain, but different downpours at different times that we wouldn't usually, more extreme weather. I was just reading this morning that this heat dome that I told you about, they're saying it could be one of the world's most extreme heat events that have ever occurred. Now, that's what I was reading. I don't know if that's a fact, but I mean, these kinds of events are becoming more and more common. So it definitely does raise suspicion as to what is going on here. Mm-hmm.
I know just where I live in England generally, since 2003, I think the first one was, we've had 2 flooding events that were described as 1 in several 100-year events, and we've had 2 in the last 20 years. So
wow, yeah,
it's kind of the frequency of these things, which of course gives us pause to think about how we are treating the planet. And of course, there's a lot of fresh water frozen up in northern Canada in ice, and we'd rather like to keep it that way, because I'm afraid you could contribute a few meters of sea level to the rest of the world from fresh water stored up in Canada.
That is a concern, and that is something that is happening now. Is there's also a risk of flooding because there's just been rapid melting of different snow caps, and so that is a concern. I mean, I will say, John, it has changed the way, on a personal level, the way we plan our vacations. We know the end of summer is generally smoky. We can't go out too much, and so we plan accordingly. When you see that your lifestyle is starting to be affected, the way you plan things, it does raise some questions. Mm-hmm.
It really is, and the reason that we're shocked by this, well, this is outrageous. This is affecting my lifestyle. How dare this affect my lifestyle? I want to live my life how I want, when I want, if I want, as I want, with whom I want. But that's just not reality, is it? It's just not reality. The other one, of course, that you'll know about being a chemist is the methane and the release of methane from the warming.
Methane.
Methane, yeah. Yeah, I think we say methane. CH4.
Yes.
Is it CH4? Yeah, it is CH4.
It is.
So as that's released from the permafrost, and of course, methane or methane is 20 times more potent of greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And this idea of a tipping point really becomes really quite a concern, really. And we're not talking too far ahead. We're certainly talking your children's generation. My grandchildren's generation. We're talking about serious potential problems. So let's hope this is a bit of a wake-up call for various people. Yeah,
I agree.
So but given it's early in the season, you could have another bout of hot weather later on in the year, because we're still only in we're just into July, aren't we?
Oh, we're just starting. We're just starting here, and that's the concern, is that things are already dry. We already have we have a rating system, so for our wildfires. So what is the risk? And we're already at extreme, and usually this time of year we would be at mild to moderate right now. So I will have to see. We'll have to see how the summer goes here. Hopefully it's not going to be too bad.
Yeah. So I think the final message is, when it's hot, anticipate your health requirements. Yes. That there was, I think it was Neil Armstrong once. He was talking, and it was in an emergency in space, and something like the oxygen was running out, or something was going wrong. And the interviewer said to him, "Well, you must have been really worried and concerned at that stage." And he says, "Well, there was an issue of potential physiological limitations."
Yeah, slight issue. It's a slight issue.
I mean, he's the coolest guy in history, obviously.
Yeah.
But he realised that there would come a point where this problem would affect his physiology, and that would affect his ability to perform. And and we just have to realise that we are just these frail bags of water, aren't we? You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
we are this mystery of life that's balanced on this delicate knife edge of homeostasis, and it can tip in the wrong direction. So another thing about humility there, you know, realize the human frailty and
absolutely
how frail we are, and how frail those around us potentially are as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Another fascinating discussion, Lindsay. I've really enjoyed it. Let's hope other people have, and let's hope that there's health applications and general interest in that for everyone as well. So
okay.
And the internet stayed good as well. We had good picture, we had good sound. So
excellent.
It's great when you don't have to worry about all these techie things. It's
I agree. It's not my forte.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lindsay, thank you. Hopefully another Canada update in a few weeks' time. Keep us up to date.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. Well, I'll let you know how things are going.
Yeah. Or there's anything you feel pressing, then don't hesitate. You know, you know where we are. Thanks, Lindsay. Really appreciate it. And
thank you, John. Take care.
To you and your family.
Okay. To you as well.